still sitting in about the high teens for the next many days. Southwestern BC is shielded for the most part. Now, we cannot rule out the potential of one of these showers make their way down around the lower mainland briefly overnight. But for the most part, as Natalie mentioned, this is more so on the central and north coastal areas that continue to get pounded by rainfall and some heavy accumulations. But then high pressure begins to take over from there, and we can see that where did the showers go? Well, the high pressure takes over, and we're going to be seeing those showers come to an end, and the clouds are gone too for the most part for the weekend. Not bad. So as I mentioned, there are rainfall warnings in place as well as some wind warnings closer. Having said that, and this may look a little ominous when you see this big red bullet, but it is fall after all, and it is the change of the season. This is fairly typical when we see these low pressure systems come through, and it does bring at times some very strong winds. The peak wind because of that high pressure. Of note though, Saturday evening, after this trough, we may see some winds picking up in strength for Alberta as well as Saskatchewan South. We had record-breaking lows. In fact, pretty decent weather overall. Can we rule out a shower? No, not necessarily. May see a shower moving through Vancouver overnight, but largely now the high pressure is building in, and that's what's going to take over. So yes, we still have some rainfall warnings and wind warnings on the central and north coastal areas. But we have had some very strong wind gusts with that low pressure system. As Natalie was mentioning, that fall storm is certainly having an impact there. In terms of impact for winds, not so much for southwestern BC. So the winds may pick up in strength here through late day Saturday and Sunday for Saskatchewan and southern Alberta, the winds coming in from the northwest. We do have cold and have had record cold lows, -8, -9. There is actually some snow being seen here in some portions of Manitoba. I don't think that Winnipeg's necessarily going to be seeing that. Atlantic Canada, you get showers in this forecast too. Of the trees swaying in Windsor, and clearly the winds now are picking up in strength around London as well as Kitchener, Waterloo, and Guelph and Cambridge from the south, and we're actually mobilizing our teams like Mark Robinson, for example, down near Port Stanley. We're going to have Chrissy on location later today, Port Credit, talking about what it's like near the shorelines of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario later today.
Right, and we have to keep in mind that this is a really large storm. It extends all the way down to Texas, basically, at this point in time, right into Ontario. And as you mentioned, the winds are picking up ahead of the rain showers, but the rain as far east as around Woodstock right now.
Yeah, and looking at the rainfall totals with this, we're going to be seeing excessive amounts of rain in northern Ontario overall between now and Sunday, which is going to be the duration. In fact, if anything, this low actually retrogrades back into northern Ontario. We may even see some local thunderstorms, and if we do, there's potential to see some heavier downpours and some bursts of heavy rain.
But what's interesting is that in northern Ontario, as temperatures cool behind the cold front, we could be seeing 20 to 30 centimeters of snow tonight.
Winter's underway in northern Ontario, by the way. Let's take a look at where we are in the west, because we have had a fall storm here that's impacted with very strong winds around Haida Gwaii, which used to be called the Queen Charlotte Islands, and the north and central coast regions of BC.
Right, and there's this protective dome, shall we say, over the lower mainland, where it's not a horrible next few days. I think that Tuesday in Vancouver's forecast, we have the potential for rain.
Of Haida Gwaii, nearly 140 kilometer per hour gusts.
And some good news we can give. I love these maps because the red and the pinks, well, pink indicates winds sustained at greater side.
Yeah, they sure do, and then the winds pick up behind the low, or that trough, I should say, in Alberta. Also want to mention cold record lows in Alberta last night. We're also going to be seeing some showers moving into Atlantic Canada in the coming days.
So it really has not been a bad day thus far for so many of us, but the worst is yet to come.
Yes, unfortunately, the worst is probably yet to come for all those millions of people who live in the GTA. And so in terms of rainfall amounts, it will be highest tracking with the center or the core of the low pressure system, which is making its way up. And keep in mind, this extends all the way down into Texas, where there was severe weather yesterday. This is all tracking up toward Lake Superior and eastern shores here, Elliott Lake and Sault Ste. Marie. Those areas are likely to see excessive amounts of rainfall. Now, we're going to be seeing some enhancement around Georgian Bay, so Sudbury included in that. But generally, across southern Ontario, we're looking at a range of between 15 and at the high end 30 millimeters of rain. However, with thunderstorms possible, that total may go up in some localized regions. And then there's the wind, of course, picking up in strength from the south initially. Tomorrow it'll be from the northwest. We do, and speaking of the northwest, all going to be, before long, we'll start to see some winter storm watches too and lake effect. We have high pressure that's building in across the west. So how much longer will we see these warnings in place for rain and wind for the coast? And I also want to note here what's happening across Alberta. See how the winds shift? Northwesterly is setting up. Strong winds in southern Saskatchewan and Alberta. Looking at record cold lows.
Back inside to you guys.
Thank you, Mark. You're well prepared, as you always are. And what I find so fascinating about this low pressure system is the scope. Look at this. It extends from northern Ontario, where there are winter storm watches, all the way down, this squall line storms all the way down into over the Gulf of Mexico. We don't see this very often where it spans the whole continent. So a very potent low pressure system that's gaining strength, it's deepening, and it's getting more energy essentially along with it. So we were talking to Mark in Brantford. Yeah, the rain is moving in. We're seeing the winds picking up around the GTA. The winds are picking up from the north, rather from the southeast. It'll be from the northwest into tomorrow. It's going to bring down our temperatures by about 10 degrees, so get ready for that. In terms of the radar zoomed in a little bit more, yeah, we talked about this and the winter storm watch, but it's north of where most population centers are, and Thunder Bay could see some showers from that. No snow expected. This possible. The wind gusts have been very, very strong on Haida Gwaii, up to 140 kilometer per hour wind gusts. We are going to be seeing the winds picking up in strength from the northwest as the wind barb changes direction for Alberta and Saskatchewan later day tomorrow into Sunday from the northwest, and it'll kick up the wind too. In terms of temperatures, we're rebounding also for Newfoundland and for the Maritimes. Yeah, we've got some fair weather for the time being, but Sunday we have showers moving through. These winds are going to be, well, 60, 70 kilometers per hour, not out of the question. They're from the southeast for the most part, and the system has a long impact all the way down into the southern U.S. Gulf.
It is a very large storm, and as we're over 24 hours at this point in time, but here comes that rain inching closer to Toronto just in time for the commute home.
When we look at the reflectivity up here, we can see that in these yellows, we're getting some bands of more moderate rain coming down. So it is a day where we started fair in the GTA, and you're going to have both hands on the the steering wheel when we're driving home, because the winds are going to be picking up. And yeah, northern Ontario, Sault Ste. Marie, Wawa, the Algoma district are going to be getting most of that rain, and there are also some winter storm watches, yes, in northern Ontario. There are the rainfall warnings, and this is just an indication that we're getting into that season now. It's October. We're going to start to see them creep a little bit further south, I'm sure, eventually.
Exactly. Yeah. And a typical October storm in British Columbia, where the bulk of the rain and the winds along the north and central coast, there are rainfall warnings and wind warnings as well.
So this is all going to dissipate because we have high pressure that's going to stabilize the atmosphere in the west this weekend. For the time being, we still have some warnings for wind and rain on the central and north coast areas.
Meters per hour, but by tonight the winds should subside, and this map does a good job of showing that. Pinks represent sustained winds 40 to 60 and even greater kilometers per hour, and we lose that through the night.
The winds will pick up in Saskatchewan and Alberta. We're also going to be seeing some rain moving through Atlantic Canada this upcoming weekend. It'll be probably Saturday night and Sunday before we see that. I'm actually looking at this low pressure system extending from northern Ontario all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. Just hearing an echo here. So we do have rainfall that's continuing. The winds are picking up in strength as well. So this is going to be our big weather maker. We are mobilizing our teams to follow this as we progress through the rest of the afternoon and through the evening for the drive home, to give you step-by-step account of what kind of winds we are what we are seeing and what we're observing out there. So it's definitely going to be one where we drove into work fine around the GTA, but it's the drive home that could be a bit dicey, and it might actually put you back a little bit in terms of timing to get home or to whatever destination you have set, because typically when we see a rainfall like this around the GTA, it doesn't take much to really start to bring things to a standstill and to slow things down. So this is a close-up view with the radar. You can actually track the radar as well. And even northern Ontario around Elliott Lake, where we do have a rainfall warning in place, we're going to be seeing the potential for storms, and we also have winter storm watches. Alberta, little trough here, some passing showers in Edmonton overnight, not a big deal. Everything starts to dissipate with our fall storm on the central and north coast of BC. We do have warnings in place still. That's all going to come to an end as high pressure takes over from the rainfall. Totals excessive, 100 millimeters around Bella Bella, and going to be eventually easing up as the high pressure holds firm, I should say. But we may briefly see some stronger winds tomorrow night into Sunday for southern Alberta and Saskatchewan, winds kicking up, and it's been really chilly in the eastern prairies. It's rebounding a little bit now in Alberta, where temperatures now are in the teens. Again, we had single digits yesterday, and we've been picking up at times some snow. So no massive storm systems to contend with, and we will be looking at the storm that is the big weather maker today in Ontario being our main focus, and then mild conditions for Atlantic Canada for the time being. It's really not, notice the Saturday's still fair. Sunday, that's the day that we'll see more unsettled weather coming through. Our low retrogrades back into the north of Ontario. Fall is here and winter is fast approaching. Are you prepared to save on energy this season? A properly programmed thermostat can reduce heating and cooling costs by up to 10%. In the winter, set your thermostat to 18 degrees overnight or when you're away. Having a licensed heating, ventilation, and air conditioning professional service your furnace can improve its efficiency by up to 20%. Make sure you're prepared for the colder weather. Visit saveonenergy.ca for more energy saving tips.